Hello Serie A fan. 2020 is over, Scudetto is back. We find the table much as we left it. Christmas champions Milan cling on to the crown, but resurgent Juve put them to the sword, and Inter's run of 8 comes to an end. Elsewhere, emotional managers make the headlines, alongside ill-advised players breaking restrictions. All that and more in this episode of Scudetto. Hello Serie A fan, and a Happy New Year. Hope you have all had a very good break. Just before I introduce the panel, a quick announcement. You will notice that it's not a Tuesday, and that is because due to the lockdown-related time constraints, additional responsibilities, i.e. children, we've had to change the day. And for that same reason, we're also going to be doing mini episodes until further notice. So Kenny, with that in mind, Happy New Year. Tell us about your break.
Happy New Year, Oscar. Yeah, it was good. It was good. There was quite a lot of alcohol consumed, which is why I'm going for an alcohol-free beer tonight on tonight's show. Just not dry January, just a couple of weeks of abstinence, which Boaz disapproves of course. How was your break?
Yeah, it was good. Similarly, I am actually on the full dry January. I've chosen myself a ginger beer. It's called a pimento, and it's just insanely spicy. You witnessed my reaction on video to try it.
I did.
Listeners are very lucky that this is not a visual format because my face just tells it all.
But yeah, so my alcohol-free beer is a Brewdog Nanny State. I'd like to feign ignorance when I open it, but I've actually had it before. And as far as the alcohol-free ones go, it's probably my favourite one. So
yeah, probably is the best one. I'm generally in agreement with Boaz on alcohol-free beers, which is why I'm drinking ginger beer, which is much nicer. Boaz, Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well overall. I was gonna register a protest vote and bring in a standard Israeli lager, namely because I have about 20 of them in my house. But I just remembered that my mother called me up and said, "Hey, don't you drink beers on that podcast? I bought you a beer." And she brought me a single bottle of beer, which happened to be an IPA. So I'm going to try that. It's a Shapira IPA.
Okay, so yeah, apologies for all of the teams that we don't talk about and talking points that we don't get to. We'd have to start with the kind of most recent and biggest game probably that took place over the period. Juventus last night beat Milan 3-1 at home. We'll start with Juventus because we always start with Milan, Boaz. Juventus went into Christmas having lost 3-0 to Fiorentina. Since then, kind of come out all guns blazing, really, haven't they, Kenny?
Yeah, they have done. It's difficult to know with Juventus because a couple of times so far this season, I've thought they've turned a corner. Certainly, they've put together 2 very good results since coming back from the Christmas break. I actually thought the Milan game in particular, they looked. It was a really good game. Could have gone either way. For me, I think the thing that game really sort of swung on was just the quality that Juventus were able to bring off the bench. It was well publicized, obviously, that Milan had a lot of injury worries going into this game, and then it wasn't helped on the day of the game when 2 players were struck down with COVID. Juve obviously had their own issues with Quadrado and Alexandro also testing positive, but I think it was very obvious that they were bringing players like Kulusevski off of the bench, who essentially put the game to bed. A youngster, but an international, and to me, that was the difference. I started off this by saying that I thought that there were, the dawns of a new era before, only for Juve to trip up. They've got a couple of very difficult games coming up. They've got the game with Napoli, obviously, to replay, and they also have to play Inter at San Siro. So we'll see if this is what a lot of people are expecting that it is.
Yeah, and Boaz, from a Milan perspective, obviously last time we spoke, we were saying that Milan are on the verge of becoming Christmas champions, which they obviously went on and did. Have since been on a bit of a run. They beat Lazio, they beat Benevento, but obviously came unstuck a little bit last night. So little bit of a setback, but they're probably pretty well positioned given the games that are coming up, wouldn't you say?
And considering the other results from the midweek and the weekend, it probably wasn't the worst time to lose the game. Although it's kind of a shame to see this amazing 27-match run come to an end. As Kenny touched upon, there was numerous players missing through injuries. I think it was 7. And this has kind of been a theme for the past several games for Milan. And eventually something had to give. When you're bringing on 18-year-olds and even if their name is Maldini, you're still not relying on much experience. And I think particularly with the loss of Rebic so close to kickoff, I felt meant that Milan lacked a focal point up front.
Speaking of focal points up front, the other thing we were going to touch on in this game is Dybala. Do we think Dybala is back now, Kenny?
Well, certainly he was instrumental in 2 of the Juve goals. For me, the first one was just a vintage Dybala, really. That it was a drag back, really, rather than a back heel. And he scored a wonderful goal as well at the weekend. So hopefully, I love Dybala. I'm a big Dybala fan, but I'll readily admit that he hasn't been at his best. He struggled since coming back from COVID. We'll have to wait and see, but he's certainly looking better. I think he came off in the second half, and Pirlo said that he's still not at completely at it. But we'll see. I did want to actually draw attention to Leao, who I thought had an exceptional first half, and perhaps that is a bit of a shining light for Milan, that he does really look like he's coming through. Although he did fade slightly in the second half.
In the time it took Leao to score that goal a few weeks ago, 250,000 McDonald's products were sold.
As he's talking about McDonald's, it's time to move on to the next talking point.
But touching on Leao, that he also scored the goal in the weekend. That was a bit of a wonder goal. It reminded me a bit of that Nwankwo Kanu goal against Chelsea. Talking about just adding a little bit to Dybala, it's interesting that he indeed had a really good game against Milan, but it kind of possibly resulted in Cristiano Ronaldo not performing to his best. And I mean, this might be a little bit controversial, but I think that maybe if Juventus are thinking of shifting someone on, maybe the slightly older player of the two is the one that... Sorry, maybe the slightly younger player is the one that's worth keeping on.
Okay, as punishment for going over the time, Boaz, I'm going to make you answer questions about Inter now. Inter, obviously... had been on a pretty amazing run of 8 wins in a row, which I'm reliably informed is the best since Mourinho. No other managers put more than 7 in a row together since. They were down at half-time against Crotone 2-1 and came back to win 6-2. They're down last night at half-time against Samp and failed to come back. Kenny, you watched that one. What was the difference?
Well, the difference was the opposition. Sampdoria were very, very well organized, and I haven't seen that much of Sampdoria in sort of entire games this season, but I saw a few back-to-back, including the Atalanta game. And what I mentioned about that one, where they actually beat Atalanta, was how well organized they were and how purposeful they were on the break and how clinical they were. The same was true against Inter. Obviously, there are a lot of caveats to this. Inter, Alexis Sanchez in particular, missed a penalty. Apparently his 8th out of his last 12, which is a pretty damning stat. I think we were talking about how bad Zlatan's penalties were, but that's not an enviable statistic.
How is he still taking them?
Well, yeah, good question. But yeah, it really did look... I was speaking to you guys during the game, and it really did look like they could have played on for another 90 minutes and not got the equaliser, really. Sampdoria were really, really well organised. Some great keeping as well. It just wasn't... They can't keep on giving themselves these mountains to climb. Sooner or later, they're going to come up short. You can't keep giving teams head starts.
Yeah, certainly. And they've, as mentioned before, they've got some tough fixtures coming up. The one that you mentioned against Juventus next game, they've got Roma. Could see a bit of a gap start to open up at the top there, could we, Boaz?
It's definitely going to be a narrative-filled couple of weeks. I'm not sure if Milan, with all their absences, can recover from this loss quickly, although Pioli's words suggests they're already back in training with the right mind. But I also wouldn't discount Inter winning one or two of these games. They're a very emotional team, and kind of like their manager, and you just never know what you're going to get with them.
Yeah, that's a good segue, emotional managers, because the last talking point is, the penultimate talking point, in fact, is Napoli 1, Spezia 2. The Gattuso quotes after that game were quite an entertaining read or watch, weren't they, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean they're pretty damning if you're a Napoli player. I'll read his quote out, which was, "We're throwing away the league. Everything burns, but we have to understand why certain things happen. Every defeat has been the same. 60 shots in our last 2 games, total dominance. But at the first moment of difficulty, we do unbelievable things. The thing that disappoints me the most is that we don't even consider that Spezia are capable of equalizing. And when they do, we lose it. We do absurd things." And I mean, you can understand his frustration, really. I think the last 5 games, Napoli have picked up 4 points. And this is a team that we were saying a couple of months ago, could they be contenders? Could they be outsiders for the title? Gattuso obviously thought that they were. They've given themselves a huge mountain to climb. I've written Atalanta off. They were big outsiders at the beginning, but they were only a point behind Napoli. And if Atalanta have got no chance of winning it, then on the contrasting forms of the two sides, then Napoli certainly don't stand a chance. Yeah, pretty damning.
And Napoli, of course, went into Retiro before Christmas, and it looked like it had worked when they came back and won 4-1 against Cagliari. But perhaps Spezia's coach, Vinny Italian's quotes about the Napoli game were the most damning thing. And he basically said, an important result for us, but that was our worst performance all season.
Yeah, don't want to talk too much more linger too much longer on Napoli, but I think we do have to discuss Victor Osimhen's stupid party, really, don't we? I mean, the videos were circulated on Twitter. He attended a party over the Christmas break at which he was certainly not observing social distancing rules and has since tested positive for COVID. I don't know what we can say about it, really. There've been examples in other leagues of players doing similar things, and you just think, like, how out of touch can you be, really? I don't know what you guys think.
It's also more frustrating because he's been injured for so long recently, and just as Napoli were hoping to have him back, and by the looks of it, they really need him, he's gone and done something quite silly. I mean, I don't want to be the guy who says footballers should be role models and kids look up to them, but particularly in this time when we're pretty much all in the same boat regardless of where we work or how much money we make, these guys should really be a little bit smarter.
Yeah, don't think there's anything more to say on it, really.
Or at the very least, don't post it on social media, do break the laws if you really need to, but guys, then don't leave any evidence.
Just to say, though, to Osimhen's credit, and well, I'm not sure if it's to his credit, he has acknowledged, held his hands up and apologized. He does there is a slight excuse in there, which was, it was a surprise party. I wasn't aware of it, but presumably you should be carrying a mask around anyway, buddy. But yeah, I mean, he said it was a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. I apologize. Gattuso as well has handled it very well, I think. I don't want to keep going on about how well Gattuso handles these situations, but he basically said, look, the guy did something stupid. He knows he did something stupid. But I've got, I hold my hands up as well, because I was the one who sanctioned his trip there. And if you're Gattuso and that is true, then you've got to be feeling pretty let down now if you sanction a trip home for one of your players and then they let you down in that way. But I guess move on. It's in the past now.
Yeah, Gattuso's a great man. He would have chinned Joe Jordan, and that's what I've got to say about it. On the topic of Atalanta, we were going to talk about Atalanta, but we don't really have time. I mean, it's all going a bit wrong. Or it was all going a bit wrong for them earlier in the season. But since they beat Ajax, they've put a bit of a run together. Last 2 games, they've scored 8 goals, and they're now just 2 points off Juve in 4th. Yeah, probably won't go into it much more than that. Kenny, you've got a couple of honourables from the Atalanta camp, though, haven't you?
Yeah, so the first one, and it comes with an apology if I'm butchering this name, but the first one is for Atalanta's new right back. They have cover for Hateboer right back now, which is Miele. I believe it's pronounced, but yeah, apologies if not. But the reason for the honourable is that he was brought in at Genk to replace a certain outgoing Timothy Castagne, and now he is being brought in at Atalanta to essentially replace a certain Timothy Castagne. So I thought that was some nice symmetry. The other one's actually for Angel Di Maria, who is not an Atalanta player, but Papu Gomez shared a picture of himself on Instagram carrying footballs basically at Atalanta's training ground, carrying a bag of balls. And Angel Di Maria commented on the picture saying, "That's all you're able to do these days," or "That's all that's left for you these days," which I think in fairness, Gomez took fairly well. He apparently replied with an emoji like, the hands up, what can you do emoji, and sort of laughing face as well.
Yeah.
Oh, also, before we do move on, it's not an honourable mention, but worth noting that Ilicic is absolutely back on it for Atalanta, so that's looking very good.
Yeah, hopefully he's not carrying a sack of balls by the end of the season. I'm just going to give a quick honourable to Roma. We're not going to talk about them, but since they lost to Atalanta, they've won 3 games in a row, scored 7 goals. Mkhitaryan is in absolutely sizzling form. I think he's scored 9 goals this season, and a handful of assists as well, and really just a joy to watch at the moment. Boaz, you have an honourable for Lukaku.
Romelu Lukaku reached 50 goals for Inter in 70 matches, and that is 7 games quicker than the great Ronaldo o Fenomeno did. So fantastic performance. Obviously, this kicked off a bunch of people on social media saying, but do you really think Ronaldo is not as good as Lukaku and stuff like that? No, he's just reached this goal. He's reached this goal way quicker.
Yeah, also worth noting on Lukaku, an interesting point. Inter have played 5 games without Lukaku in the starting lineup this season. They've won only one of those, drawing 2 and losing 2. So, yeah.
And I'm not sure if we mentioned it earlier in the season, but Lukaku came out with some really interesting quotes. I think it was last month, where he said that for his first 3 or 4 months at Inter, Conte had him train with Ranocchia, who's a 1.85 m defender, just behind him, trying to turn him for every single training session, which kind of shows what kind of a manager Conte is, but also kind of suggests Lukaku's improvement in front of goal.
Yeah, fair play. Definitely wouldn't have wanted to play that role personally. We've got another honourable.
Quick shout out for Torino.
Quick shout out for Torino, because we're not going to speak about them, definitely. Yeah,
amazing. They're 1-0 up with 15 minutes to go, and they actually won 3-0 rather than losing for starters. So that was a nice turn up for the books.
I highly recommend checking out the celebrations for the second goal, where they finally got this monkey off their back, and they celebrated like they won, like Tardelli celebrated the 1982 World Cup. It was amazing.
God, it must have been such a relief for them though. But yeah, they followed that up by then themselves doing a sort of mirror of what they normally do. They were actually trailing with just over 5 minutes to go against Verona, and came back to equalise. So things looking up for Gianpaolo.
Okay, some speedy honourables. We are running out of time, Baz.
On the quick subject of Conte, which we already mentioned, there was a fantastic clip of Antonio Conte shouting at Vidal, who had just conceded the penalty, and he's telling him not to break the dick over and over. And it's because the stadiums are empty. It's really echoing. It's fantastic. You should check this video clip out.
And Benevento, with another team we're not going to have time to speak about, but honourable for being in 10th position.
Yeah, absolutely. And they beat Cagliari 2-1 as well. So the run keeps on going. And they're what season they're having.
And I want to give an honourable mention to Verona player Mattia Zaccagni, who scored a wonder goal of a overhead kick. And the kind of goal that if it was scored by Lewandowski or Harry Kane would be in everyone's Twitter feed. But because it was scored by lowly Verona, it's kind of a Serie A exclusive.
Yeah, it was glorious, wasn't it? Like textbook overhead kick.
The whole move is lovely as well, and Verona plays some great football. So for the hipsters out there who don't want to watch Atalanta, they're not a bad option.
because we always have time to talk about Zlatan and honourable for his sauna video, running out of a sauna into a pile of snow, a scenario familiar to me over the course of this year.
Zlatan's also been in the news in the past few weeks because he's been announced as one of the co-hosts of the infamous Sanremo festival, and this is going to be for 5 nights. And apparently the Milan management raised their eyebrows a little bit because Milan play 2 or 3 games in this period.
Thanks for that. All right, that is all we've got time for this week. We'll speak to you around this time next week. Until then, enjoy the football.
Che sta decretando lo scudetto del Milan in questo preciso istante. Finita! La Juventus è campione d'Italia questa data, il 6 maggio.
Di anticipo, la Roma è campione d'Italia per la stagione 2000-2001. Il titolo del